Stone castles still stand on windswept hills. Cathedrals built hundreds of years ago still lift their spires toward the sky. Timber-framed houses lean slightly, but remain firm in the heart of old European towns. When you look at these structures, you cannot help but wonder why medieval buildings have endured for centuries. When so many modern constructions struggle to last more than a few decades, the answer lies in a combination of craftsmanship, materials, design, and an entirely different way of thinking about time and purpose. In the medieval world, buildings were not created with the idea that they would be replaced in a few decades. They were intended to serve generations. A castle was not just a residence for a lord. It was a symbol of power and a fortress that might be needed for centuries. A cathedral was not only a place of worship, it was a monument of faith that would inspire people long after the original builders had turned to dust. When the goal is permanence rather than short-term utility, every stage of construction changes. The builders of the Middle Ages approached their craft with patience, often working for decades or even lifetimes on a single project. The materials chosen were another key to longevity. Medieval builders favored stone, particularly in important structures, because it could withstand weather, fire, and the passage of time far better than most other materials. Limestone, granite, and sandstone were quarried locally when possible, reducing the risk of damage during transport and ensuring that the stone was suited to the regional climate. In timber structures, oak was the preferred choice because of its strength and natural resistance to pests. This wood, when properly treated and kept dry, could endure for hundreds of years. Unlike much of modern construction, which relies on cheaper materials to save costs, medieval builders invested heavily in the most durable resources they could obtain. The techniques used in medieval construction also played a significant role in their survival. Masonry work was done with extraordinary precision, often without the aid of modern measuring tools. Stones were cut and fitted so tightly that some walls stand without mortars in certain sections. Where mortars was used, it was often lime-based, allowing the walls to breathe and shift slightly without cracking under pressure from changes in temperature or ground movement. This flexibility made medieval walls surprisingly resilient to natural wear and tear. Roofs were often pitched steeply to shed rain and snow quickly, protecting the walls and foundations from water damage. Another reason for their survival is the massive scale and thickness of their walls. A castle's defensive purpose demanded walls that could withstand siege engines and battering rams. Some were so thick that entire staircases or chambers could be built inside them. These thick walls not only resisted human attack but also provided stability against storms and earthquakes. Even in smaller homes and town buildings, the walls were substantial by modern standards. This meant that even when exterior surfaces weathered or cracked, the core structure remained solid. The craftsmanship was deeply rooted in tradition and apprenticeship. Medieval stonemasons, carpenters, and blacksmiths learned their skills over many years under masters who themselves had inherited techniques from previous generations. There was no rush to finish projects. The slow pace allowed for meticulous work, which meant fewer mistakes and more durable results. Builders were often deeply invested in their work, both financially and spiritually. As many projects were tied to religious or feudal obligations, this personal investment translated into quality that could not easily be compromised. It is important to remember that medieval buildings have also lasted because people maintained them. While the original construction was superb, no building could survive untouched for centuries. Townsfolk and later generations repaired roofs, replaced beams, repointed mortars, and restored damaged sections. In many cases, these repairs were made using traditional methods and original materials, ensuring that the structure retained its integrity. This commitment to preservation has been a crucial factor in the survival of so many medieval structures. The environment in which many of these buildings stand has also contributed to their longevity. Castles built on elevated ground not only provided better defense, but also kept them away from floodwaters. Many cathedrals were constructed on stable soil or bedrock, reducing the risk of foundation problems. The builders had a keen awareness of geography and often placed structures in locations that naturally helped them endure. The social and cultural value attached to these buildings has ensured their protection over the centuries. People in the medieval period did not just see a building as a functional space. They saw it as part of their identity. A cathedral was the heart of a community. Castle, was the pride of a region. As time passed and societies changed, these buildings came to represent heritage and history, prompting generations to care for them as living monuments. Even when warfare or neglect threatened their survival, communities often rallied to restore them. Architectural design in the Middle Ages also leaned toward adaptability. Many buildings were constructed with the idea that they could be added to or modified as needs changed. Cathedrals often took decades or even centuries to complete, with new sections added by later generations. This flexibility in design meant that repairs and reinforcements could be incorporated into the original plan without destabilizing the entire structure. Weathering patterns also tell a story about why these buildings last. Stone, when exposed to centuries of wind and rain, develops a hardened outer layer called a patina. This natural weatherproofing actually helps protect the stone beneath from further erosion. Builders may not have fully understood the chemistry, but they recognized that certain stones aged better than others and chose their materials accordingly. In contrast, many modern buildings are constructed for efficiency and cost saving, with the expectation that they will be replaced rather than preserved. This mindset produces structures that serve their purpose for a few decades, but lack the inherent durability of their medieval counterparts. The medieval approach was almost the opposite. Build something once and make it last as long as possible. The upfront cost was higher, but the reward was a building that could endure the ages. The sheer weight and solidity of medieval buildings give them a permanence that modern lightweight structures cannot match. When you stand inside a stone-walled hall that has stood for 700 years, you feel the difference. The thick walls muffle sound, the heavy timbers still carry their original load, and the craftsmanship speaks through every detail, its physical presence built into every corner. Is why these structures can withstand not only the weather, but also the slow decay of time. Fires, wars, and neglect have destroyed many medieval buildings, but those that remain demonstrate the resilience of their construction. Even ruins tell the story. A crumbling castle wall, though missing its towers and battlements, can still show the incredible skill that went into its making. The fact that fragments of masonry can stand for centuries after abandonment speaks volumes about the original strength of the work. In many cases, medieval builders designed with disaster in mind. Defensive towers were built with tapered walls so that they could better resist collapsing under attack. Roofs were made with overlapping tiles or lead sheets to create waterproof seals. Floors in castles and monasteries were often raised to keep them dry in case of flooding. This foresight, born of necessity, added another layer of endurance to their work. The spiritual dimension of medieval building also cannot be ignored. Many of the greatest structures were built in honor of religious beliefs, and the builders saw their work as a sacred duty. This often meant that no expense or effort was spared to ensure the building would stand as a lasting testament. In a time when life was unpredictable and often short, creating something that could endure for centuries was a way to reach beyond mortality. Even today, modern engineers study medieval structures to understand how they have lasted so long without the benefit of modern technology. Techniques like the use of flying buttresses to distribute weight, the precision of stone vaulting, and the strategic placement of load-bearing walls are still relevant in architectural design. While materials and methods have evolved, the fundamental principles that made medieval buildings durable remain valuable lessons. Ultimately, the reason medieval buildings last for centuries is not just a matter of materials and methods. It is a reflection of a mindset that valued permanence over speed, quality over quantity, and community over individual convenience. Every stone was placed with the understanding that it would be part of something far greater than a single human lifetime. In this way, medieval buildings are not just relics of the past, they are living symbols of endurance, patience, and vision. When you walk through the shadow of an ancient castle or sit beneath the vaulted ceiling of a centuries-old church, you are experiencing the result of choices made hundreds of years ago by people who believed in building for eternity. They could not have known the exact shape the world would take, but they built as if their work would matter forever. Judging by the walls that still stand, the spires that still rise, and the homes that still shelter people today, they succeeded. And that is why so many medieval buildings are still standing strong after hundreds of years. They were not just built. They were crafted with patience, vision, and a determination to last beyond a single lifetime. Every stone, every beam, and every archway was placed with the knowledge that it might outlive the people who made it. Like much of today's construction, these structures were not designed for quick profit or temporary use. They were meant to be permanent fixtures in the landscape and in the lives of generations to come. When we look at a centuries-old castle or cathedral, we are seeing more than just stone and wood. We are looking at history itself, preserved in walls that have weathered storms, wars, and the slow passage of time. They stand as monuments to human skill, ingenuity, and a very different way of thinking about time and legacy. So, the next time you walk past a medieval building, take a moment to notice the details, the craftsmanship, the sheer endurance it represents. Because in a world where so much is fleeting, these remarkable structures are a reminder that some things truly can last forever.